Hello and welcome to my video lesson 5.6, Solving Radical Equations. So hopefully you've seen the last few videos in this topic where we're looking at how to simplify radical equations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, in order to understand some of those basics in order to solve some radical equations. Now, this part is specifically, this topic, 5.6, is specifically looking at what if you have the radical over an x, over some sort of x term. What do we do to solve that? Well, let's take a look at our first one. And basically, this is the idea of opposite operators. So if ever we have algebra, we have to think about opposite operators. So opposite of addition is subtraction, multiplication is division. And the opposite of square rooting is to square something, right? Or cube rooting, really it's the root versus the square. Like, it doesn't matter what the number is, cube root, fourth root, second root, it's always rooting and a square. I guess maybe a draw it like that. Okay, so those are opposite operators of each other. So with that in mind, let's try to solve for x here and move all the numbers over. Well, opposite operators means also opposite bedmass. So we're going to go this way. Now, keep in mind that if we have the root that's going over multiple numbers, that means it's in brackets. So we're going to do that first. And we're going to do the thing outside the brackets first, and we're going to do the brackets last, I suppose. And so that would be the exponent part, or radical is an exponent, just a fractional exponent. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to square both sides. So what this allows us to do is to cancel out the square with the square root. So we're left with 3x equals 6 squared, which is 36. And then what we can do is divide by 3. That cancels with that. So we're left with x equals 12 as our final answer. All right, so what if it's a little bit more complicated by having like x plus or minus a number inside? Well, let's go through this process again. So opposite operators means opposite bedmass. So first thing we have to start with is the addition subtraction. So let's move that over. So first step is to move that over. We're going to subtract by 2, subtract by 2. So now we're left with, those cancel, so we're left with square root of x minus 3 equals 5 minus 2, which is 3. All right, and now at this point we can do the same thing as before, which is to square both sides. So that allows us to get to x minus 3 equals 9. Now, there is a little bit of a trick here that you have to be aware of that we didn't look at it in the last question. And it's not going to matter in this question either, but whenever you square a square root, you have to just keep in mind that the inside could be a positive or negative. But if it's a negative, you would have a negative square root of 1, which is an imaginary number. So we can't have that. So it's not going to be relevant in this question. It has to be positive. But just keep it in mind in case it does affect your final answer here. So anyways, we have x minus 3 equals 9. So now we can just add 3 on both sides. And so we're left with, those cancel, so we're left with x equals 9 plus 3 is 12. Oh my goodness, it's the same number. Hopefully I didn't make all of them the same. Okay, let's try the next one out here. Basically the same process. Again, pause the video if you, at this point, feel like you know what to do. Pause the video, try out the questions, and see if you get them right. So At this point, I'm just going to give a little bit more space. At this point, the only thing different here is that we have an x here. That will affect it, but let's start with subtracting 5 on both sides. So that cancels here. So we're left with square root of x plus 3 equals x minus 5. Now what we're going to do is to square both sides. That allows us to get x plus 3 on this side. But on the other side, it's going to be a little bit more messy. So we're going to have x squared minus 10x plus 25. And in fact, this might actually not give us a nice round number here. I should have made it something else. So what we're going to do is try to get it to equal 0 and make it just a straight up quadratic. So to do that, what we should do is subtract by x, subtract by 3 on both sides. So that gives us, actually turns it into x squared minus 11x plus 22. Yeah, that's no good. It's not going to be a nice round number. But that's okay. All you have to do is then use the quadratic formula. So that's negative b plus or minus square root of, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Because this equals 0. So let's get this value. So x equals, and now we just have to plug in all of our numbers. So that's 11 plus or minus 2 times 1 is just 2. Square root of 11 squared is 121 minus 4a. A is just 1, so that doesn't matter. C is 22, so that's going to be a really big number. So 4 times 22, so that's 88. Okay. 11 over 2 plus or minus square root of 1233. Okay, and can we do any more simplifying? No, not really. So we would just leave it there. So x can be either of those two values. However, if x is those values is the, now you have to just double check back at the beginning. If you're subtracting by x, or if there's a subtraction sign at all, then you just have to be careful that you don't have a negative value in this green radical here. So luckily, this will be a positive value no matter what. And so that actually means there's two solutions to this question. See, the plus or the minus, and both of them would mean that the green radical is positive. So they are both solutions to the question. Okay, and our last question here is kind of similar again in process. So we're going to move the x over before we can square to get rid of the radical. So we're going to go, actually we're going to move the radical over because it has a negative here. So let's move the radical over instead actually, and move the 2 over. That way our negative doesn't mess us up. So minus 2, minus 2. So we've just moved everything over, so that gives us x minus 2 on this side, and a plus, right? A plus x, plus square root of x squared plus 2 Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to square both sides. This allows us just to get x squared plus 2 in here. Okay, and on the other side, it allows us to get x squared minus 4x plus 4. And now if we move the x squared plus 2 over, we're going to get, right, so if we subtract, well, let's use a different color for this. Minus x squared minus 2 minus x squared minus 2. That means it'll cancel here, 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 and here, and here. So we're left with minus 4x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, and now at this point, we can move the negative 4x over by adding 4x on both sides. So 2 on this side and 4x on this side, which means that if we divide by 4, let's see here, what's another color? Divide by 4 here, divide by 4 here. That gives us x equals 2 over 4, or more simply, 1/2. All right. I hope this video helps you understand how to solve radical equations a little bit better, and good luck.